Good afternoon, good evening. It looks like it's free second Sundays at the museum because it's on jam in here, y'all. I just wanted to give you a quick report live from the Charles Howard Wright Museum of African American History, working Cinetopia, and I did get an opportunity to see some of Black women in medicine. So I just want to share with you some of the highlights, some of the things that really stood out for me in watching the film. One, there were quite a few people who said, quite a few of the Black women in medicine who said that they knew at 3 or 4 that they wanted to be a doctor, or when they were 12 years old that they wanted to be a doctor, or sophomore in college. But there were a lot of people who were very young, I noticed, who said that they knew that they wanted to be a doctor. And that was kind of fascinating to me. And then here they are, doctors. So one of the women said that you can't be what you can't see, and I took that to mean not only what you can literally see. Sometimes we see things, we have visions of things. Maybe we don't see them actually in the world, but we have a vision of something that's not concrete, but we can still be it because we can see it in our mind. One of the women in the film said that 4 and 2% of the physician workforce is Black men and Black women. So 4% of the physician workforce is Black men, and 2% is Black women. I thought that was very low. Rebecca Lee Crummell, I'm not sure about that name. In 1864, she was the first known African American woman to graduate from New England Medical School, I think. So 1864, when was the Emancipation Proclamation? In 1860, somewhere around there. There was one woman who said that she was pregnant at 16. She had 5 children before marriage. She was a single mom of 4 or 5. She did everything the wrong way in terms of becoming a physician. And she was always telling her daughters, go to school, you gotta go to school, you gotta go to school. And one of her daughters asked her, where did you go to school? And she didn't have an answer for that. So that's when she decided to go to school. She wanted to lead by example. And she said she had to do remedial work. When she took the test to get into college, she was not able to, begin work at the typical college level. She had to do some remedial work. And she said that she was living like a single mother of 5, and her peers were not living like a single mother of 5. So a lot of times they'd be like, oh, just put it on the credit card. She'd be like, yeah, I'm just gonna put it on the credit card. But in her head, she was like, I don't have a credit card to put it on, or my credit cards are maxed out. She talked about one time having her lights cut off, her family sometimes having to huddle around the stove in order to stay warm, and that she couldn't let her peers know, and that she had to get up, she had to get dressed, and she had to perform just like everyone else. There was no exceptions made for her because of the situation that she was living in. One of the women spoke about the isolation of being a Black woman doctor working odd hours, and that she said that she was not looking for someone on her level. She doesn't look for people on her level. She looks for someone who has a kind face. She's just looking for someone with a kind face. And so that's how she's become friends with people who might be the cleaning lady, or who might be whomever, who you might think are not on her level. You might think they're not on her level, but her criteria for who she's looking to connect with is not about their educational achievement, but their kindness. She talked about the unconscious bias that people have from their perspective, and one woman spoke about being in a meeting, and the man who was running the meeting, which was a junior associate of hers, was addressing all of the male doctors as Dr. Smith, what do you think about this? Dr. Brown, what do you think about this? Dr. So-and-so, what do you think about that? But when he would address the women doctors, he was addressing them as Mary, Sue, and Jane, and she pointed it out to him, or asked him if he realized that he was doing it. And then she said for the rest of the time that she worked with him, whenever he would see her in the hall, he would look down to avoid eye contact with her. She said that it's hard, one of the women said that it's hard to get patients to understand that their surgeon is not always a white man. So, just people questioning, where's the doctor? Are you the real doctor? Just like what we saw here recently on these airplanes, where we need a doctor, and the Black woman stands up and she says, I'm a doctor. And the stewardess or the flight attendant says, no, we need a real doctor. In 1960, Harvard Medical School had 150 graduates. Not one of them was Black or Hispanic. And there was a decline in black folks in medical school until affirmative action from whenever. Like by the time you got to 1960, it was really, really low, but there had been more people who had been involved with medical school before that. During enslavement, black women were leaders in healthcare, and now we might be moving into the question and answer section. I'm not quite sure. She talked about the connections that black doctors have either with black patients who kind of feel more comfortable sometimes and feel more relaxed that this person is going to understand them and not judge them if they have a black doctor, and sometimes have expressed delight at having a black doctor, black patients have, and that sometimes white patients don't expect a black doctor to be good or competent or excellent. There was some conversation about the interaction of race and gender when it comes to the medical profession. There was one black woman physician who talked about lifting the shirt of a patient and seeing a white supremacy tattoo on his abdomen and asking if she was sure that he wanted her to treat him. And it kind of reminded me of, you know, there were a lot of times in our history when we were preparing food and taking care of the very people who were, you know, tearing us down very actively and literally beating us. The last two surgeon generals, were they black women? I kind of missed some of that, but I heard the woman say that one was dismissed, her value as a physician was dismissed because someone felt that she was too fat. And then another one was dismissed, or, you know, her opinion or her assessment of a situation was dismissed even though she was a medical doctor. The filmmaker, I think, was Crystal Emery. I wasn't quite clear because there was one man who was on the panel. Crystal Emery was Skyped in, and then there was another woman on the panel. I think that she had written Medical Apartheid, but I'm not sure if she was involved with the making of the film. But she said that it took her 5 years to make the film because it took her 5 years to raise the $800,000 that it took to make the film. She said that what making the film taught her was that black women are not valued and that we don't value ourselves. She said it was a challenge to get folks to see the value in telling the story of black women in medicine, and also for the black women physicians to trust that she wanted to tell their story, and a story of not allowing race, gender, and socioeconomics to deter you from whatever your vision is. The author of Myriad of Medical Apartheid, her name is Harriet someone, was on the panel with the black one man, and she talked about us missing out on intellectual capital, that black women were midwives, healers, and doctoresses. And were preferred by white women because we had a better record. We had a history and a habit of cleanliness that we had brought over, many of us had brought over from, you know, the African continent and our traditions there. And that we cannot afford to overlook genius, and black women are an untapped pool of genius. There were a couple of the physicians who had come from people who were carpenters or seamstresses in their family, fathers, grandfathers, grandmothers, whatever, and that they had an opportunity to use that skill set in the medical profession. So I thought that was interesting. Someone talked about not always being able to rely on sisterhood and gave a story of, I'll get to that story in a minute, but that this idea of sisterhood does not always extend and often doesn't extend to black women. The white women band together as sisters, but they don't count us in as that. They talked about black students and the fear of using the race card. That in a lot of these medical campuses, and I noticed it on the campus of my school as well, people could feel very, very comfortable connecting and banding together as women, but were sometimes even afraid to make eye contact with other black students because they didn't want to have the stigma attached to needing help or only being in school because they were black students, or only having achieved what they had achieved because of affirmative action. And her suggestion was, don't worry about what other folks think. Embrace help like white folks embrace help. Everybody is out here getting help. There's no reason for us to be ashamed of getting help and support. They talked about women reaching back and making sure to help others, and a tradition of that with black women physicians. They said that the normal thing that they do is not to screen the film at film festivals, but to have film in a workshop. So it's an initiative that they have going. The estimate is that 3 to 6% of black women and that 3% of that in medicine, 3 to 6% are black women, and that hiding race is common for people who want to finish medical school. People feel that if they can hide it, it helps them to hide it so that people won't be stigmatized. And she had already told us a story about women medical students who band together to get a black woman kicked out of med school when they found out that she was black. And the professors fought to keep her because she was the best student. So it's interesting, they couldn't look at her and tell that she was black. I don't know who this is yelling and screaming and why, and if it's doing anything to the quality of my film, but I guess I'll have to check that later. And since 1976, the number of black male students, medical students, has been dying. So that's what I got, Fabulites. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Be you, be fabulous you. Peace.